I mean, you learned, like, I know we were kids.
Yeah.
Well, when you all went through that, I'm looking at it and saying, well, there's a lot more to it than just brave guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was amazing.
I really enjoyed last week. Like I enjoyed the week before that too, because it's and that's why I took the hiatus on Kings to do this, because it's because this really helps the sermons and all that stuff. Because like, even if I was reading all that Gideon stuff, like I wouldn't have seen the stuff we talked about. Yeah. And we've got it recorded now. Just go and watch it again. And so like that's and so it's which is what I do. Like that's
well, why not?
Yeah, it's right there. And so it's cool being able to see all that stuff and hear it. And yeah, there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
And because one of the things about the scriptures that I really take is that the scriptures are the fact that we still have them and read them is, I think, is a testament in and of itself of the importance. Like that's the fact that they're still being handed out, because if there wasn't anything that was kind of under the surface there, they would have been dropped centuries ago. Like that's more than centuries, that's like, these things have lasted, and so I think that's kind of testament in and of itself, because, and the reason why I say that, a lot of people are like, well, it's the Bible, so it's important. Well, the Bible hasn't always looked like this, so it's, at some point the stuff was written down, and now we have it in this form, and the fact that we have it, I think, is one of the testaments to its importance, because the church and God's people have said, like, oh, this is good to read. Now, there's some things I don't think are as important, but maybe we'll do, like Joshua is one of them. Maybe we'll do a study on it, and I'll be proven wrong. like that's, but yeah.
This also proves that as you get older,
yeah,
and you read it again,
mm-hmm.
you're still learning.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So it's important.
Still learning. So, yeah.
So you're the only one getting older.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. The way I feel right now from packing, I feel like it must be 150.
Yeah. The Coley's and I's light strategy on how we do teaching is we teach the kids the stories. So if you ever notice what Coley is doing with the kids, she's making sure they have an understanding of the stories. Like over there, she doesn't try to theologize them too much. She doesn't try to do that, but that they have a familiarity with the stories. And then really starting with confirmation, we're like, all right, that now that you have that knowledge, what does this mean? Like, what are these things? And we're still doing that to this day, like that's, mm-hmm. And so like we try to take that knowledge that they have, that general knowledge, and then use it. And so, and we can see it's cool in this study, you can see what we do is it's like, oh, well, that sounds like this. Yeah. And that's remembering those stories. This sounds like that. This sounds like this over here. So that's what we do. So I guess we can begin. I don't know when I'm going to start the recording on this for YouTube, because I feel like that content was actually pretty decent. So we'll find out. I'll officially begin things now, though. But yeah, it is. It's it's right up here in the corner.
He edits. He takes our comments out.
Yeah. Well, I only got half of her question, though. I only got half of your question. So like. That's what you asked it. I was like, there should be in here. Like that's so I got it going. All right. So that's good. So we are continuing with Judges, and so we're looking at all this. we'll see how much we get through today. We are in chapter 9. We have gone over Deborah and Gideon. And so Gideon was kind of fascinating because he was kind of hard to pin down. He was kind of a like not the most brave, but had brief moments of bravery. And I thought the most interesting things, talking about the stories like we just did, and how similar that sounded to Jericho, and with how they defeated with the 300, and how similar. And honestly, as someone who grew up in the church, I get frustrated that I was never taught anything like. I was taught about Gideon, like coming up. I was homeschooled, as in all this stuff, and how Gideon. And for those of you that weren't here or didn't watch last week, Gideon, when if you remember that story where God whittles down the fighting forces down to 300, and then they go and defeat this other town, and it's using all the same words as Joshua in the Battle of Jericho. And you see that again in 1 Samuel too, when Jonathan goes and defeats the Philistines once. It's all these same terms. So, and I think that's code language. It's obvious code language that God is protecting the people, that he's with them, and yet they still don't trust. Yeah, like that's kind of the idea with Judges. And so we're seeing these things where it's like, hey, it's happening and you should remember this. And that's also the code language of always remembering Egypt. Like God took them out of all that. He saved them, and that keeps coming up, and yet they still don't trust. And so like that's all right. So let's do chapter 9. Chapter 9 is super long. There isn't any obvious headings. Should we just do it all? I didn't read ahead at all for this week. Should we do it all? Yeah. Might as well. That's the phrase for this study.
It goes. It does not have a.
Yeah, it doesn't have an obvious stop. Yeah. All right, so we will do Judges chapter 9. So we hit this button, this button, this button, and then this button. For those online, let me know. All right, there it goes. It's working. Let me know if the echo doesn't go away. You know what I did? Never mind. You think I would figure out how to do this. But I am just a man, and I'm not very good at it. All right, here we go.
Then Abimelech, the son of Jerubbaal, went to Shechem, to his mother's brothers, and spoke with them and with all the family of the house of his mother's father.
Please speak in the hearing of all the men of Shechem. Which is better for you? That all 70 of the sons of Jerubbaal reign over you, or that one reign over you? Remember that I am your own flesh and bone.
And his mother's brothers spoke all these words concerning him in the hearing of all the men of Shechem. And their heart was inclined to follow Abimelech, for they said, "He is our brother." So they gave him 70 shekels of silver from the temple of Baal-berith, of which Abimelech hired worthless and reckless men, and they followed him. Then he went to his father's house at Ophrah and killed his brothers, the 70 sons of Jerubbaal, on one stone. But Jotham, the youngest son of Jerubbaal, was left, because he hid himself. And all the men of Shechem gathered together, all of Beth Millo, and they went and made Abimelech king, beside the terebinth tree at the pillar that was in Shechem. Now, when they told Jotham, he went and stood on top of Mount Gerizim, and lifted his voice and cried out,
"Listen to me, you men of Shechem, that God may listen to you. The trees once went forth to anoint a king over them. And they said to the olive tree, 'Reign over us.' But the olive tree said to them, Should I cease giving my oil, with which they honor God and men, and go to sway over trees? Then the trees said to the fig tree, You come and reign over us. But the fig tree said to them, Should I cease my sweetness and my good fruit, and go to sway over trees? Then the trees said to the vine, You come and reign over us. But the vine said to them, Should I cease my new wine, which cheers both God and men, and go to sway over trees? Then all the trees said to the bramble, You come and reign over us. And the bramble said to the trees, If in truth you anoint me as king over you, then come and take shelter in my shade. But if not, let fire come out of the bramble and devour the cedars of Lebanon. Now therefore, if you have acted in truth and sincerity in making Abimelech king, and if you have dealt well with Jerubbaal and his house, and have done to him as he deserves, for my father fought for you, risked his life, and delivered you out of the hand of Midian. But you have risen up against my father's house this day, and killed his 70 sons on one stone, and made Abimelech, the son of his female servant, king over the men of Shechem, because he is your brother. If then you have acted in truth and sincerity with Jerubbaal and with his house this day, then rejoice in Abimelech, and let him also rejoice in you. But if not, let fire come from Abimelech, and devour the men of Shechem and Beth Millo, and let fire come from the men of Shechem and from Beth Millo, and devour Abimelech.
And Jotham ran away and fled. And he went to Beer, and dwelt there, for fear of Abimelech his brother. After Abimelech had reigned over Israel 3 years, God sent a spirit of ill will between Abimelech and the men of Shechem. And the men of Shechem dealt treacherously with Abimelech, that the crime done to the 70 sons of Jerubbaal might be settled, and their blood be laid on Abimelech their brother, who killed them, and on the men of Shechem who aided him in the killing of his brothers. And the men of Shechem set men in ambush against him on the tops of the mountains, and they robbed all who passed by them along that way. And it was told Abimelech. Now Gaal, the son of Ebed, came with his brothers, and went over to Shechem. And the men of Shechem put their confidence in him. So they went out into the fields, and gathered grapes from their vineyards, and trod them, and made merry. And they went into the house of their God, and ate and drank, and cursed Abimelech. Then Gaal, the son of Ebed, said,
Who is Abimelech, and who is Shechem, that we should serve him? Is he not the son of Jerubbaal, and is not Zebul his officer? Serve the men of Hamor, the father of Shechem. But why should we serve him? If only this people were under my authority, then I would remove Abimelech.
So he said to Abimelech,
Increase your army, and come out.
When Zebul, the ruler of the city, heard the words of Gaal, the son of Ebed, his anger was aroused. And he sent messengers to Abimelech secretly.
Take note, Gaal, the son of Ebed, and his brothers have come to Shechem, and here they are, fortifying the city against you. Now therefore, get up by night, you and the people who are with you, and lie in wait in the field. And it shall be, as soon as the sun is up in the morning, that you shall rise early and rush upon the city. And when he and the people who are with him come out against you, you may then do to them as you find opportunity.
So Abimelech and all the people who were with him rose by night and lay in wait against Shechem in 4 companies. When Gaal, the son of Ebed, went out and stood in the entrance to the city gate, Abimelech and the people who were with him rose from lying in wait. And when Gaal saw the people, he said to Zebul,
Look! People are coming down from the tops of the mountains.
You see the shadows of the mountains as if they were men.
See! People are coming down from the center of the land. And another company is coming from the diviner's terebinth tree.
Where indeed is your mouth now, with which you said, Who is Abimelech that we should serve him? Are not these the people whom you despised? Go out, if you will, and fight with them now.
So Gaal went out, leading the men of Shechem, and fought with Abimelech. And Abimelech chased him, and he fled from him. And many fell wounded to the very entrance of the gate. Then Abimelech dwelt at Arunah, and Zebul drove out Gaal and his brothers, so that they would not dwell in Shechem. And it came about on the next day that the people went out into the field, and they told Abimelech. So he took his people, divided them into 3 companies, and lay in wait in the field. And he looked, and there were the people coming out of the city, and he rose against them and attacked them. Then Abimelech and the company that was with him rushed forward and stood at the entrance of the gate of the city. And the other 2 companies rushed upon all who were in the fields and killed them. So Abimelech fought against the city all that day. He took the city and killed the people who were in it, and he demolished the city and sowed it with salt. Now when all the men of the tower of Shechem had heard that, they entered the stronghold of the temple of the god Berith. And it was told Abimelech that all the men of the tower of Shechem were gathered together. Then Abimelech went up to Mount Zalmon, he and all the people who were with him. And Abimelech took an axe in his hand and cut down a bough from the trees, and took it and laid it on his shoulder. Then he said to the people who were with him,
What you have seen me do, make haste and do as I have done.
So each of the people likewise cut down his own bough and followed Abimelech, put them against the stronghold, and set the stronghold on fire above them, so that all the people of the tower of Shechem died, about 1,000 men and women. Then Abimelech went to Thebez, and he encamped against Thebez and took it. But there was a strong tower in the city, and all the men and women, all the people of the city, fled there and shut themselves in. Then they went up to the top of the tower. So Abimelech came as far as the tower and fought against it. And he drew near the door of the tower to burn it with fire. But a certain woman dropped an upper millstone on Abimelech's head and crushed his skull. Then he called quickly to the young man, his armor-bearer.
Draw your sword and kill me, lest men say of me, a woman killed him.
So his young man thrust him through, and he died. And when the men of Israel saw that Abimelech was dead, they departed, every man to his place. Thus God repaid the wickedness of Abimelech, which he had done to his father by killing his 70 brothers. And all the evil of the men of Shechem God returned on their own heads, and on them came the curse of Jotham, the son of Jerubbaal.
Okay.
After Abimelech
Stop.
arose to save his...
Okay. It just doesn't. It just doesn't. Like that's. Yeah. Like that's. So there's kind of a lot going on in here. I think it's kind of getting us up to the end, but it's the before I open it up to everyone else. I think it's interesting what the authors are doing here, because Gideon has two names, Jerubbaal and Gideon. Like those are just two names, and it seems over the last few chapters, it's moving in and out between calling it Gideon and Jerubbaal, which I kind of wonder if there is a righteous idea behind that, or if it's just the region that they're in. I'm not real sure, and that's why I wanted to say that first. If you guys had any insight into any of that, because it seems like this isn't the most holy time going in, and they're referring to him as Jerubbaal, and so like that's anyway. So, what stood out to you? What stood out to you?
A lot of violence.
It's a lot of violence. A lot of violence.
If they wanted to recruit an army, they didn't recruit them. They just impregnated a lot of women and let them grow up.
And like
70 kids.
Yeah. They had all of those. They bought a bunch of mercenaries of no good men, I think it said at one point. Yeah. Vance, you were about to say something.
The other thing that was interesting to me is that in the past, God anointed the judge, or appointed the judge in a sense.
Yeah.
In this case, Abimelech took control on his own, and the people followed him of their own choice to follow him rather than.
Well, it is looking very king-like, because it's Gideon's son, or Jerubbaal's son. Yeah. It's looking very king-like. There were a lot of things in here that reminded me, just rhyming, not one-to-one, but kind of rhyming with Saul's reign.
Youngest son again.
Yeah, youngest son.
Is the one that hid and was spared.
Yeah. Like there's just a few how he wants to be killed at the end. Like that. There's just a lot of things that kind of reminded me of Saul's reign in here. And I kind of wonder is if the authors of Samuel are wanting us to see some of Abimelech and Saul by writing that in that. I don't know. This is all just conjecture, but what else stood out?
You reap what you sow.
You reap what you sow. Reap what you sow. Yeah, like this whole chapter. This whole chapter kind of reminds me of critiques of the Indiana Jones movies, and the critique of the Indiana Jones movies is that the movies don't even need Indiana Jones. They all would just have happened no matter what. And it seems like that kind of like there's no advancement of the plot in this. It's just like this offshoot story of Abimelech. But what else kind of stood out to you here?
The description of the trees.
Yeah.
The trees?
Really,
Like in the poem, or
where the says once the trees went forth to anoint a king over them, and they said to the olive tree, reign over us.
Oh yeah. So that poem there. Yeah. So let's talk about that poem here for a little bit, because that's interesting. And my study Bible said something kind of interesting about that. What's your reading about that? So did you have any thoughts about, because that definitely stood out, because it's like poetry prose, like.
I mean, what it reminded me of, it's not the same, but it reminded me of Joseph and
Yeah.
everybody, the bowing down.
Oh, okay, yeah, the
visions
and all that. Yeah. No, I think that's good. I think it's definitely part of it, because so what else stood out to you guys about that poem? It's kind of verses, like kind of the second half of 7 and then through, was that 15? Is kind of what we're talking about here. It's like this olive tree, and then he's like, oh, well, if I'm a king, if I rule over you, then I can't give you oil. Then someone else is like, well, I can't give you figs, I can't give you wine. And then you got the bramble.
Thorn bush.
Thorn bush, yeah. What is it? What is it? Thorn bush? Is that what it says?
In the Jewish Bible, it's thorn bush.
Bramble, thorn bush. Is that thorn bush? Yeah, buckthorn. Buckthorn. Getting in some old words there, like that. That's so. What do you think this is saying? What do you think this is saying? Because you have the olive tree is a very respected tree. I don't know. What do you think? That it gets down to the bush, and the bush is like, I'll rule. Like that's so. It's
the bush would consume all the cedars of Lebanon.
Yeah, well, it could easily catch fire, right? Like that's and burn everything down. I think there's multiple things going on. It does say take shelter in the shade in verse 15, which is that's a biblical idea of safety. Like that's like evangelical Christians often use, like, we'll put a hedge of protection around us. That's kind of the same idea. Like that. That's that in the comfort of their shade. So that's, but also there's a lot of destruction along with it. And I kind of wonder, because this whole chapter, this whole story of Abimelech, so it kind of starts here talking about all of a sudden the bramble is kind of taking charge, and he's killed by a woman. At the end. Is that, and then also connected, like Judges has a lot of women doing things. You had Deborah just before, and all that stuff. And is that bringing the pride of Abimelech, who's the son of the great Jerubbaal, of Gideon type of thing? Is that kind of is like the fire of the bramble ends up taking him out? I don't know. I'm trying to look at it kind of through this means, but is this poem kind of giving us an indication of what's going on? Now, my study Bible, which normally doesn't equate stuff to Jesus much, does here, and I thought that was interesting. He goes, if the reference to shade is not sarcastic, so there's, for those who've been in my Bible studies enough, I think a lot of the Bible is sarcastic, and I think it helps to read it that way. I think it's more fun to read then. But if the reference to shade here is not sarcastic, it is preferable to equate this with Christ, a thorn, a stately evergreen that grows in the height of 30 feet. So it's interesting how it's all working together here. I don't know. So, did anyone have any thoughts to that? I just thought it was interesting. They got to the very bottom, and it could mean one of two things to me. Is that it could either be that the humble end up ruling, or it could be that there are people that are just nasty, and all these other people, they're like, well, they're good, but they're like, yeah, I got better things to do. And you get down to where actually needing to rule it, and someone who's nasty is actually the one who steps up.
I think when you think about the thorn bush, it's a weed. It's not something you want. A bramble is something you typically don't want.
Mm-hmm.
And Abimelech is essentially the bastard child.
Yeah.
And not wanted. He was not one of the son. He's a son of Abimelech, but not one of the 70.
Yeah.
So he's the outsider again. So I kind of saw the thorn bush as being this connection also.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you also, I don't know, mentally, my image of the thorn bush, and it isn't, I know what brambles look like,
Yeah.
but my mental image is kudzu climbing up,
Oh, yeah, kudzu.
overtaking everything.
Yeah.
around it.
Is everyone familiar with kudzu? I mentioned kudzu a lot. Like it's popular in the South.
Saved your life.
Yeah, it did. I don't know if it saved my life. It saved my car. Like that. That's saved my car. Like that. That's right. I said that in a sermon. Like that was the kudzu. Kudzu is a very thick vine that we're always contending with in the South. No briars or anything on it. No thorns on it. But you can't really walk through it. It's too thick. But that's interesting. I also thought of how Abimelech ended up killing all of his brothers, right? Did I read that correct?
All except one.
All except one.
And it's that one that this poem is actually the curse from Jonah.
Yeah, and he's the one that says that. Yeah. So there's, and I kind of think it's like this, I think you kind of said this, that poem is kind of talking about Abimelech being kind of the lowest, but I think also that it's a little prophetic in that how he ends up dying, which should be this great thing of victory for him as he's finally fleshing out the tower, right? And he's killed by a woman. Oh no, right?
Well,
oh no.
He's more worried about his ego than his head being smashed.
Exactly. Yeah. Don't like that.
I still have to look good, even though my brain is seeping out of my head.
Yeah. Like it's ridiculous. So so he kills all of his brothers and all that stuff. And that's the part that really made me feel like this sounded like the Kings, like of Saul and David and all that stuff, because they're always killing off brothers when there's chains of command going on. And all these things. So what else stood out to you here?
I think that it was Abimelech with a true ego full of power grabbing.
Yeah.
He kept seeking who can I defeat? What can I do? Seemed like he was constantly seeking power.
Yes. I like that's definitely what it sounds like. And it's just insatiable for him. Like that's he could leave these people alone, but that ends up killing him.
And he was only in power for 3 years.
Oh, 3 years. It's an interesting number too, right?
All
finished.
He was in there a couple times.
Yeah. I'm trying to look and see what our schedule is for this one. Seeing if we actually do. Yeah, we lumped this with Gideon, so we probably won't even talk about this. So it's So what else? Anything else that you thought was interesting?
There's a weird reference to the soothsayer's tree.
Where was that at? Do you remember?
37.
37. So Gaul spoke again and said, "See, people are coming down from the center of the land." Oh, yeah, the diviners, yeah, and another company is coming from the diviners' terebinth tree. What does it say in the Jewish Bible there?
Look, an army is marching down from Tabaris, and another column is coming from the direction of Elon Memorandum, or whatever it is.
Okay, so they're not translating it. They're not translating. So it says.
Now, it may be a different verse in the Jewish Bible, but what is it?
This one's 37, but it's the same. He says, look, the people are coming down from the center of the land, and a company is coming up from the direction of the soothsayer's tree. And I just thought this was an odd reference to the soothsayer tree.
That was not in the Jewish Bible.
Well, they didn't care.
Unless Elon Memorandum is the soothsayer's tree.
I don't know.
Well, and
it's not translated.
It could be because they some of these things are translated names, and they may leave them.
Ezekiel 38.
is where the other one is.
38. This expression is all found in Ezekiel 38:22.
Okay. So it's said again in Ezekiel. Okay.
It just was an interesting reference. I didn't know.
No, it is.
Why they referenced a specific tree, and I didn't notice it in Ezekiel.
It's
Okay. Elon Memora, whatever, is a road named for the sacred terebinth that was adjacent to it, where necromancers,
okay. So
were evidently active. So.
And so what is a terebinth tree? Like what is?
I don't know.
Okay, all right, like
It
that's
just says it here that it
yeah.
reference, the clarification reference just says it's a terebinth tree. Well, okay, great. What does that mean?
Okay, so diviner. So in Ezekiel, it's like a like where necromancers kind of eat
Cypress turpentine plant.
turpentine.
Yeah, I think we've looked that up before.
Have we?
Turpentine sounds
Yeah, like that. So, but like I would mention, like necromancers, there's definitely.
business.
I wonder if it's kind of a phrase that's kind of being used as like, look, like evil is coming, or something like that, bad is coming, type of thing. If we're looking at these other references, like it's like these people, like oh, they're coming out of the like something. Like if you're in the middle of war and you're watching someone come to you, they may be like, oh, look, they're coming out of the pits of hell. You know, like something like that.
According to the navel of the earth, they call it.
Navel of the earth. Man. that's
interesting.
Yeah. So that's kind of interesting. So it could be a phrase where they're just like scared, you know, that that's the evil thing that we just don't have anymore. Let's see. Was there anything else?
It ended reflecting the curse of the son of Gideon, Jotham.
Oh, it ends up the song of Gideon.
The son.
Oh, son. Yeah, it reflects the curse. Yeah. No, that's good. Yeah, I'd kind of forgotten about that. So yeah, like that's, and it kind of continues on. I love that how that last chapter ended with like, and Israel again played the harlot with the balls, and you have their judge as Jerubbaal, not Gideon. So let's see. Yeah, I think we kind of. Oh, I wanted to talk about the very end, verse 56 and 57. In 55, Abimelech dies, and they departed every man to his place. Thus God repaid the wickedness of Abimelech, which he had done to his father by killing his 70 brothers. Okay, all right. So we got. I don't believe in karma, but it's amazing how things work out. Type of idea going on here. And all the evil of the men of Shechem, God returned on their own heads, and on them came the curse of Jotham, the son of Jerubbaal. Like that's like so basically it's like you all were evil. Is that what this is saying? You all did bad. Okay, like that was one thing I was like, what is going on here? Like at the end.
They blindly followed Jerubbaal.
Jotham. Abimelech, yeah.
They just blindly followed Abimelech. Got my people confused.
Yeah. And you also have Jotham is like, because that's the guy who said the.
Yeah, he was the tree guy.
The tree guy. Let's see here. Yeah. Okay.
And Jewish Study Bible does say that from the top of that mountain that he was supposed to give this speech, nobody would have heard him.
All right.
Shouting from the mountaintops.
Yeah. Did you want to say something, Cheryl? Okay. All right. Well, let's go on to chapter 10 then. Let's go on to chapter 10. This is a shorty. This is a shorty. Watch this one be packed with stuff though. That's okay. Let's see. Share screen. Hit this button.
There we go. In here. So.
After Abimelech, there arose to save Israel Tola, the son of Pua, the son of Doda, a man of Issachar, and he dwelt in Shemo, in the mountains of Ephraim. He judged Israel 23 years, and he died and was buried in Shemo. After him arose Jair, a Gileadite, and he judged Israel 22 years. Now he had 30 sons who rode on 30 donkeys. They also had 30 towns, which are called Havoth Jair to this day, which are in the land of Gilead. And Jair died and was buried in Camon. Then the children of Israel again did evil in the sight of the Lord, and served the Baals and the Ashtoreths, the gods of Syria, the gods of Sidon, the gods of Moab, the gods of the people of Ammon, and the gods of the Philistines. And they forsook the Lord, and did not serve him. So the anger of the Lord was hot against Israel, and he sold them into the hands of the Philistines, and into the hands of the people of Ammon. From that year they harassed and oppressed the children of Israel for 18 years. All the children of Israel who were on the other side of the Jordan, in the land of the Amorites, in Gilead. Moreover, the people of Ammon crossed over the Jordan to fight against Judah also, against Benjamin, and against the house of Ephraim, so that Israel was severely distressed. And the children of Israel cried out to the Lord,
"We have sinned against you, because we have both forsaken our God and served the Baals."
So the Lord said to the children of Israel,
"Did I not deliver you from the Egyptians, and from the Amorites, and from the people of Ammon, and from the Philistines? Also the Sidonians and Amalekites and Maonites oppressed you. And you cried out to me, and I delivered you from their hand. Yet you have forsaken me, and served other gods. Therefore I will deliver you no more. Go and cry out to the gods which you have chosen. Let them deliver you in your time of distress."
We have sinned. Do to us whatever seems best to you. Only deliver us this day, we pray.
So they put away the foreign gods from among them, and served the Lord. And his soul could no longer endure the misery of Israel. Then the people of Ammon gathered together and encamped in Gilead. And the children of Israel assembled together and encamped in Mizpah. And the people, the leaders of Gilead, said to one another,
"Who is the man who will begin the fight against the people of Ammon? He shall be head over all the inhabitants of Gilead."
All right, there's not a whole lot going on in this one. Like there's some. All right. So what kind of stood out to you in this?
The people do evil again, and God says he's not going to rescue them anymore, but then he changes his mind.
Like, it's a very I think it's interestingly written, because I had that underlined as well, that it kind of shows the compassion of God in this, where he's like, "I had enough." Yeah, like that.
It's kind of like the father-child syndrome to me.
Oh yeah,
where your kids go out and they kind of make you feel like but then they come home and they say, "Hey, Dad."
yeah. That's kind of, like, I think that's a good way of explaining it. Like, it's kind of an interesting thing. Again, right before that, we have that phrase, like, "Did I not deliver you from the Egyptians?" So we're kind of getting into this cycle of getting introduced into a new judge here. And it's interesting that after Gideon and Abimelech, you have all these other guys that are kind of judging here.
55 years worth.
Yeah. Like there's not much happened. Not much happened. Which I think kind of shows you like what was going on with them is slowly kind of going down, and kind of after Jar, it's like, well, they're serving the Asherah poles and the Baals, and we're back at it again. Like they're going after all these other gods.
So many gods to drive you away.
Yeah. There are. And so the anger of the Lord was hot against them. So he sold them to the Philistines. That's interesting language. What does other translations use there? That's verse 7. King James is they sold.
I wonder if there's another version of the word sold.
Yeah, Ed was about to read. What did you say?
It says, and the Lord, incensed with Israel, surrendered them to the Philistines.
Surrendered them.
That makes more sense. Otherwise, it sounds like slavery to me.
Well, and I'm wondering if the King James translators were trying to give that kind of idea, like almost like again reminding us, the reader, of Egypt, of reminding us of that.
Isn't there really just a subtle difference between surrendering them to, which is giving them up to, versus selling them or sold them to?
Yeah,
I think that's a big
nobody
difference.
actually paid God.
Yeah. There's no one's being paid. There's nothing being paid here. It's an interesting. The King James translation is a really good translation. They, being the kind of the first out to be an English translation of any notoriety, they did a lot of the translation work. Like there's a lot of phrasing which is incorrect in the King James version, but they took idioms and they translated them into English idioms. And so it's an incorrect translation, but it's actually really correct. And the problem is a lot of those idioms now we're 500 years removed from that. Not quite 500, 400, right? Like that's 400 years removed a lot from those idioms. And it's out there. It's a good translation. It's just not our language anymore. Yeah. That's the problem with the King James. And if you have familiarity with it, it works great. But it's like reading Shakespeare kind of now. Even though that's what we're using here, but that's I don't know. Like so what else stood out to you in this chapter?
I thought it was just kind of interesting on that. Jair, I guess it was. This is verse 3.
Yeah.
He had 30 sons who rode on 30 donkeys.
Oh yeah.
30 cities. But then that's all it says.
Yeah, that's all it says. He's got some notoriety there. He's like, yeah.
My brother didn't kill the other brother.
Yeah.
Wow, what a concept.
Like, and that is interesting. Let's see what the notes say.
Just remember that Saul lost his donkeys.
Yeah.
Well, and that's like the donkeys is an interesting connection. Like Saul lost the donkeys. Like donkeys kind of play into the stories happening there. Let's see. The significance of the donkeys is not clear. The narrator's choice terms seem to highlight the function as riding rather than pack animals. Prestige associated with owning asses is reflected not only in the Song of Deborah, but also extra biblical writings. So, like that, they don't know what to do with that either. But no, that's the thing. Is it's like good. It's good numbering too. Like that 30 is a good number. So that's kind of funny.
Jewish Bible says.
I was thinking that it pointed out the fairness in that particular individual thinking. If he had that many sons, they each had a donkey and they each had a town.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They're very equitable in that way.
Yeah, equitable between the.
It also makes it really seem like JR, I don't know, has a lot of wives too, most likely. That's going on there. Got to be, well, yeah.
This just says a large number of offspring and barrows indicates his established position.
This just makes a statement that it's a symbol of wealth.
Yeah.
Symbol. Yeah. Yeah. Good.
What if they had to worry about feeding their kids, or it was just the women's job to worry about feeding the kids?
Well, I think it's
well, they were rulers, so everybody was giving them tribute.
Yeah. I think that's that thing we were talking about. It's like like a showing of position that it's like, oh, look at I got all of this.
Of course, I don't see them.
My infant mortality is way lower than everyone else's. That's
do you suppose they remembered any of their names?
No.
Half of them. The first half and the last one.
Maybe.
Like
that's let's see. Well,
we got to remember that's only sons they talk about in the Bible.
Oh yeah. My sons. We're not talking about all the girls that are in here. I kind of don't want to go on to the next chapter because that's the next two chapters are kind of one kind of narrative there, and we're kind of up against the time, so this one will probably be a little shorter. So was there anything else from anywhere in Judges that we've talked about so far?
I just thought it was interesting how often Ephraim was brought up.
Ephraim. Here in this last chapter that we just read, 10?
Well, yeah, but in other places in the Bible, it would be very interesting seeing just of that one area, all the ups and downs and things that have come out of that one. I keep seeing that.
Yeah, Ephraim and is that like Gilead too? Is that the same place? Is that like that's? Like that you have, I was thinking that too at the end is like all this talking about Gilead. There is a balm in Gilead. Like that.
That's among him.
Yeah. So like that's like it's all these things, and that stuff comes up. These places come up in other places, a lot, and so that's kind of getting reference there. I'm not sure why, but. I
have a question. I was reading at home trying to catch up, but chapter 7, verses 5 through 6, 7. Everyone the meaning of this, if you know, that laps the water with his tongue. Laps and shall sit by himself.
Yeah.
What is this about?
We talked about that a lot last week. Like the overview. If you want to hear us all like disagree with each other for a while, like that's like last week's like you give that one a watch. But it really there was like I think there was one or two ways that we were kind of decided it was meant. One of the way is that. Well, it's either the way they're doing it is of strength, kind of shows strength. If they're lapping like a dog, that's like a good thing, or it's a bad thing, and or if they're reaching up and they're drinking like this, it's either a good thing or a bad thing. But it's like this big test, and it whittles them down. I think the whole point is that it whittles them down to the 300 there at the end. And that's not enough to win a battle, and I kind of took the length of whichever way that he ended up picking, which I think was the lapping like a dog. I think, which is the correct way to think, by the way, is that's the weaker way.
Yeah.
And that's they're not watching, and so then they're so it's like these. Really kind of shoddy warriors going into battle against this.
So back in the day, that was a way of identifying.
I think it was just here. I think it's just here. Like it's an odd way, and it's just whittling it down to where there's no. And God says it multiple times in the story here that it's like I'm whittling it down to show you that I am the one that's causing this victory. There's still too many people. Is one thing it said once. You may think that you get this victory yourself, We need to whittle it down. So we talk about that a lot last week. And so and I'll show you at the end here. I can show you how to look at it. And so if you want to look at it, but we spent probably 20 minutes on that, maybe.
Yeah, because the lepers were those who knelt down, so they were bowing to another god. So
there were all kinds of things. Last week was very fun. This week has been duller in comparison. But there was all kinds of fun things last week to talk about. And so
it's taking the eyes off of the goal.
Yeah, taking the eyes off the
water.
goal.
You're looking at the water and not at the battle.
So she says that's the negative then. Like it's all over the place. It's all over the place. So, but that's kind of it's like it's just a way of differentiating and it's open to interpretation about what all that it means. But no, that's good. That's good. So, well, for everyone on YouTube watching this pre-recorded, thanks for joining us.